Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Alex on Tech and iTWireTV. Today, I'm interviewing Geoff Schomburgk, the Regional Vice President, Asia Pacific and Japan at Yubico. So welcome back to iTWireTV, and congratulations on the promotion to Regional Vice President.
Oh, thank you, Alex, on both counts. It's great to be back to have a chat and back to a new year, and thank you for those kind words. It's great to be here.
Well, I mean, security is only getting more important, so clearly Yubico must have been liking what you were doing, and Asia Pacific and Japan is meant to be the Asian century. Everything is growing in that particular region, so it's good to see. And what did Yubico get up to sort of in the lead up to last year, and what's been happening in the last few weeks of January?
It's been a good start. We had a really good year in the Asia Pac region last year. So in Yubico land, we're relatively small, but fastest growing, and had a really good year in the region, as you would expect. Security is such a hot topic, and in this year we've managed to close a few deals already with some interesting customers. And other than that, I guess I've been taking the opportunity while other people have been relaxing, sitting on beaches and what have you, to do a bit of planning. And start to look forward how we can continue to scale the business to support that growth.
Yeah, and of course,
kind of where we've been at so far.
Yeah, well, it's also now the third year, I guess, of the pandemic. It's only, as we were recording, a couple of days since the 2-year anniversary of the first person arriving in Australia from Wuhan with COVID. And for better or worse, you managed to catch COVID. So, in a nutshell, what was that like?
I think disappointing, to be honest. I'm lucky enough, or fortunate enough, to be triple vaccinated, so managed to catch it from a friend. We were out doing what we thought we could do, going out for lunch and going to music shows and stuff like that. And inevitably, there's so many cases around, caught it, but it really only slowed me down for a couple of days. The symptoms were very mild, and back at full strength. So thankfully, vaccinations work.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of the Yubico security keys of the body, right? These vaccinations.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was triple vaxxed and went to CES. All my tests came back negative, and PCR tests on there and on return. So I haven't managed to catch it yet, and but thankfully, we seem to finally be easing out of it. Let's hope that most people watching it, if they do catch it, it's mild, and let's hope we start getting out of this mess. Now. One of the most recent announcements from Yubico was the YubiKey Bio. So give us a short version of what the YubiKey Bio is, and since it's launched, how's it been selling? Have you also been seeing a lot of existing YubiKey users upgrading to this new model?
Yeah. The YubiKey Bio, as you would guess from the name, it kind of looks like that. Same sort of form factor as a traditional YubiKeys, but instead of the little touch, it's got a biometric fingerprint reader. So that's the advancement to move to that next level. So much convenient. We're so used to biometrics with our smartphones, with facial recognition or the touch ID. So we've brought that onto the YubiKey. And it's a real driver to this passwordless authentication as well. So there's been a lot of demand. We've had some really good reviews, including from David at iTWire. So there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement there. We see that the consumer market is taking it up really well, and the enterprise market is really evaluating it now. So they've got small numbers and testing and evaluating how it's going to work in their corporate environment. So demand is great. We're struggling to keep up with supply, which is, I guess, a good problem to have. But that's where it's at.
Sure. And one of the questions that just sort of comes to mind is how many of your fingerprints can you assign to the device? And has there been enough time to test it through a winter cycle? I know that on my previous older iPhones, when it used to become winter, and I don't know, the cold air would sort of change my fingerprint. Sometimes I'd have to reset the fingerprint because it wouldn't always read properly. So what's the shorter version of how it deals with the change in the weather and how many fingerprints you can put on?
Yeah, well, the default is you can put 5 different fingerprints on there. So, typically you might have a thumb and a forefinger and then on both hands. So there's certainly enough options there to give you multiple fingerprints. And I think it's a little too early to tell as people put it through its paces, but like you have with your smartphone with the facial recognition or the touch ID, there's always a PIN as a fallback. So if it fails to register on 3 different attempts, then you revert back to the PIN. So that's a user experience that we're all familiar with. But if you're working in a grubby environment, your fingers are dirty or you've got gloves on, these are the things that enterprises at scale really want to test out, and how effective is it compared to the simpler version that we had before with just a capacitive touch.
Yeah, and those versions are still available for those who need it. Yeah. And as well as the NFC versions, which is just a tap basically.
Yeah.
Now, in early December, a colleague of yours wrote a very interesting blog post about the myths of mobile authentication, which many people would associate with the app on your phone from various people that generates a code that you need to use as part of the login process, sort of resets every 30 seconds. And Yubico is calling that legacy multi-factor authentication. So can you just, I guess we're going to talk about this more in some of the subsequent questions, but what are the dangers associated with mobile authentication as opposed to a hardware key? Yeah.
Okay. It was a good article, got a lot of interest, and there's a really good white paper that's also available on our website to download. That goes, and
I'll link to those in the article that goes with this video.
But we use the term legacy MFA because it's not really phishing resistant. That's kind of like what we see with modern strong authentication. It has to be phishing resistant. We've seen during the pandemic, the sophistication of cyber attacks is increasing. So the mobile as an attack vector is really front and center for a lot of the hackers out there. And mobile-based technologies, be it the app on your phone or whether you're using an SMS to push to the phone, where the phone is involved, it is really a vulnerability that's being exploited now. So that's why we say legacy, and it's not as strong as alternative solutions such as the YubiKey out there today.
Yeah, I mean, most people would still be thinking that SMS authentication and mobile apps are secure, but I mean, what you're saying is really they're not secure anymore. Or not secure enough.
Secure. Yeah, exactly. And it's that scale of where you need to be to give yourself the best possible protection. So there was some research that was done that, and it's in the white paper as well, that 76% is the success rate against phishing by using the mobile phone type apps. So it's good. 76 is better than naught. And as we say, it's better to be using some form of MFA than none. But if you are at risk and you see that this risk is growing, then maybe we're asking that question: is mobile-based authentication strong enough? Is it good enough, given the profile of risks and that we're all dealing with? So
yeah, well, I mean, in the blog post there was a couple of sort of infographics, and one of them was showing how you can have somebody calling you, or you can be calling somebody to try and help you log in if there's some sort of issue because you've been redirected to a sort of a fake page, and they're capturing, you're telling them what the code is. I mean, you can't be doing that when you've got a hardware key, because there's no code to be giving them. Correct.
And that's the cryptography, the strength of these modern, stronger authentication techniques, such as the FIDO protocol. That that's really what we talk about when we say strong modern authentication.
And it's also, as you said before, how you get to this world of passwordless, where, I mean, in effect, you are the password, or the hardware key is the password, but there's no physical password at all, except, I guess, in the case of that fingerprint, where you might still have to type in a key, which I'm assuming you could disable that too if you didn't want it.
That is in the roadmap for FIDO. Currently, the implementation of that, and as deployed by Microsoft, it requires you to enter a biometric or a PIN. So it's part of that gradual shift, but the standard allows for that to be completely password or PIN-less. So it's an evolution, and I think that's the whole story behind this. It's an evolution. We think about the mobile. There are a lot of cases where you can't use your mobile. If you run out of battery, if you lose your phone, all the data is stored on the phone. So having a physical device might seem counterintuitive, but when it comes to security, that makes it a much stronger approach. And the convenience that we built into that FIDO protocol, Yubico sort of inventing that FIDO protocol and working with others like Microsoft and Google now, to really make it convenient and deployable at scale.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly good to see with the physical keys that the mobile devices have finally caught up, as they did last year sometime, where you could insert one of those when they first came out. That you could only do it on a browser, but now, I mean, the number of times I've used my physical key to connect it via my phone or my tablet, when I've gone to a different location, it hasn't recognized it, and it says, put it in, and you can tap it, and off you go. So yes. It's nice to see the gadgets have caught up with the technology.
Look, and I think it's, that's one of the areas that we're focusing on is helping to build that ecosystem. So yes, you can do it with Microsoft, you can do it with Chrome, Apple are working on it. Other identity access management partners are all working towards that. So that's one of the areas that we're focusing on is building that ecosystem to support this strong, convenient passwordless authentication.
Now, we probably all thought wouldn't be doing the work from home thing as we went into 2022 when this all first started happening. A year ago, 2 years ago, and then a year ago, we probably thought we were getting out of it, and here we are. A lot of people are still working from home, so that's probably not going to really ever change now, despite some of the employers out there, hoping that maybe it would. So we really have gone through this seismic shift. And, the Omicron variant is with us. I hear on the news about new Omicron variants that are even more infectious. So, clearly this is going to be rolling on for quite some time. So how many Australian and global businesses are still not getting it, still using legacy MFA, still not really putting security at the forefront and risking ransomware or some other attack that could even shut their business down?
Yeah, it's hard to give an exact figure to that. And it depends on what you mean by legacy. So if we talk about smart card, that's been around for 20 years. So that could be considered a legacy MFA solution, but it's still very, very secure. So, but in our discussion with customers that we're talking to, a lot of them still, the majority, would still be deploying some form of what we would call legacy MFA. And that's kind of to be expected. When we started the pandemic and the rush to work from home, just take what you've got. Now we're starting to mature a bit and go, hang on, is that good enough? So we will see that change, I think. I'm starting to see that shift now, that we need to move away from not just good enough, but what is appropriate now for our business.
And so if an organization was to come to you, I mean, how long does it take them on average to deploy YubiKeys to employees? I mean, obviously it depends on the size of the organization, but, is it a quick deployment or does it take some time? And, do you also help your customers with some kind of security audit? What happens when a company approaches Yubico for help?
Yep. So the first part of that question is how long does it take? And of course the answer is it depends. What does it depend on is based on what is the organization's applications that you're authenticating into, and what is the sort of processes and procedures that need to be thought through. So deploying the keys is relatively straightforward, and we work with our customers to get them out there very quickly. Scale is what we do. So one example last year with a customer, about 20,000 keys, we were able to get that deployed out within 6 months. So, we can roll them out pretty quickly. So the limitation is really the organization's readiness to accept that, and how are you going to make it simple for users to register and start using the keys. But the second part of the question, we don't do security audits per se, but what we do is work with our customers and our reseller partners to actually educate and say, okay, let's go through that checklist of all the things you need to think about. We've got a really nice little life cycle approach. So we'll work with our customers to go through that life cycle. How do you onboard? How do you get the keys out there? What happens when somebody leaves? What's your process behind that of getting the key back? You let them keep the key and move on, because as you know, the YubiKey can also be used to protect your Facebook, your social, online, and your personal world as well. So we've got a series of best practices that we'll talk through our customers with, and if they want to go deeper into that, they can either engage Yubico or engage our reseller partners who are trained to do the more detailed security audit and process definition.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they're interested in deploying YubiKeys, that's obviously a great opportunity for the reseller partners to say, well, hey, let's look at the rest of your security environment, because you're going to have to make this change anyway. And there's never a good time for a change as such. Everyone's always too busy. But if you're going to do it, that's a good time to do it.
Yeah, and as you say, the YubiKey is an important part, but it's not the only part of the overall cybersecurity landscape. So that's all our partners play.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure partners are well aware of all the opportunities, and the companies are well aware too of the need. I mean, I just go to that website, have I been pwned, pwned.com.
Yes.
I type in my email address, and every couple of months there's another notification from them that your password is leaked. But I use a password manager. All my passwords are different for every site, so I'm never worried about it. But I'm always, it's always amazing to see how many breaches and leaks there are. It's just incredible.
It's scary. Yeah, it is.
Now, another victim of Omicron, as it were, was the Tech in Gov conference, where I was looking forward to catching up with you to learn about what was happening. So, I mean, what was your involvement going to be? Were you going to be part of any panels as well as having a stand?
So, it's disappointing that it's been moved on, but
it's been moved to May, so hopefully by then it's going to be all good.
Hopefully by then we'll be able to do it, and Yubico is going to have a presence there. We'll have a stand in the exhibition hall, but our technical guru Alex Wilson, he'll be doing a presentation, one of the presentations there, and then we'll be running a series of customer roundtables as well, where we can get to have a bit more. Presentations is great, but if you want to have that more detailed and personal discussion, that's where the roundtables that we'll be hosting as well. We'll be running those.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the conference. I mean, I live in Canberra, and it's not going to be on the scale of CES, but still, I mean, with all the nation state hacking and all the rest, security and technology and government has never been more important, as well as all of the digital acceleration of all the online services that government sort of had to accelerate as much as the commercial world. So let's pray that it's going to be not going to be delayed any further. Yeah. Are there any customer success stories in Australia or globally that really stood out for you over the past year or so?
Yeah, there's a lot that we've had, and obviously we can't talk about all of them. We'd like to, and we're working on some that hopefully we can make into public case studies. But I think globally, the Google case study remains a really strong. The results continue to show that zero account lockouts over such an extended period of time. The Twitter case was actually one where mobile-based authenticator apps were the cause of a breach. So that was an interesting one globally. Locally, the darling of the tech world, Atlassian, is one of our customers that we can talk about publicly, and they continue to expand and be successful, and they're all using their YubiKeys there as well. So, look, there's pretty broad areas in terms of banking, finance, government customers, university customers, moving more towards critical infrastructure guys as well now, because that's being seen as important to protect that. So hopefully there's a lot more we can share with you soon on some of those names. Absolutely.
And, the awareness, even just among individual business owners. I was reading an article on news.com.au about how a couple of people, some Daintree Forest business, some other small business person, they had their Instagram accounts attacked and stolen from them. And, the hacker wanted all this Bitcoin to get it back. And I checked my own Instagram settings. I mean, I don't really use it, but I logged on and checked, and my two-factor authentication wasn't turned on. So I turned it on. And, it just goes to show that there's still a huge opportunity for both awareness and adoption. And that isn't going to decline in need anytime soon.
No, and it's interesting that in some areas it's being sort of pushed out as a mandate. For example, the US government, that Biden administration did their executive order to mandate the use of multi-factor authentication last year. Then they upped that again to mandating phishing-resistant MFA. Salesforce.com, so they've got so many users worldwide. They've now mandated that you have to use MFA to access Salesforce. So we can see that the push is coming. To make people aware of that. And as you say, you go, oh, hang on, I'm using MFA on this app. Am I using it on my social world as well? Why aren't I doing it on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn? So, it's a bit of a momentum building.
Now, I think at the last physical CES in 2020, you were just showing prototypes of the YubiKey Bio, which is now a product that is on sale, and as we mentioned before, people are buying and using. So how else do you see Yubico evolving over the next couple of years? I mean, might there be something that analyzes brainwaves from each individual person, which would be an even more individual form of biometric security? Or are all those plans top secret?
Oh, look, there's certainly a degree of secrecy shrouding what's in the product roadmap. But look, I think, as I said, with these mandates coming, that it's going to be more prevalent. It's going to touch more and more people. So a lot of our focus now is on the service side and making it easy for people to acquire, deploy, and manage a fleet of YubiKeys. So a lot of our enterprise services, such as our enterprise subscription model, where you can pay as you go on a monthly fee rather than buying the keys up front. For large organizations, that makes sense at scale. So we're probably doing a lot more focus on that. And as I said before, behind the scenes, our engineering team working with to build that ecosystem to move towards strong passwordless authentication as well. But look, in terms of other YubiKeys as physical devices, a bit hard to say, and I guess in my personal view, I think it'll be more around convenience. So what else can we do that might be more convenient to use? Does that mean something that you strap to your wrist, or does it mean something you hang around your neck that's a bit bigger? These are the sorts of things that might be worthy of consideration. But no, that's kind of where we're at.
And is there anything else about Yubico that we should know that I haven't asked, and that's just popped into your mind to think, hey, I should tell the people watching about this?
No, I think we've covered it. Obviously, the message is strong multi-factor authentication. It's easy to use, it's easy to deploy, it's cost-effective compared to other techniques out there. And just what we're seeing is that wave of push from the influence that, say, the US federal government will have on their whole supply chain. And we're part of the Five Eyes here in Australia and New Zealand, so you can see that will influence us as well. And I think it's really a case of people sit back and think, don't take it for granted that your security is okay, because the hackers are not. They're getting smarter and cleverer. And it's not just the big companies, it's the smaller businesses as well. So everyone is at risk. And really sit back and think, what is my risk profile? What's at risk? And do I really need to implement some stronger form of security to keep me safe online?
Well, Geoff Schomburgk, the new Regional Vice President, Asia Pacific and Japan of Yubico, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to talking to you again soon when you launch new products and services, and best of luck for 2022.
Thank you, Alex. Great to chat, and hopefully we'll see you in Canberra.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great. Thanks, Alex.